effective method of getting across to the masses. Whether used for good or bad, great orators told stories to grasp the attention of their audience. The media tells stories compellingly to shape narratives for their agenda. Parents tell stories to put their children to bed and raise them with their same ideals. Unfortunately, only a handful of businesses do a good job when it comes to telling stories to sell and get the word out about the amazing work they're doing. For over 25 years, Jodi Lawaich has written copy for multi-million-dollar companies, including Kaplan Test Prep, Vermont Teddy Bear, and Pajamagram. It gives me great pleasure to moderate this fireside chat with my amazing friend, Jodi. Welcome, Jodi.
Thank you, Celeste.
Awesome. So I know that in prepping for this, we've had amazing conversations, and just so you know, Jodi and I are friends. So this is a family affair today, maybe, with our new friend, Samuel Pazwa. So first off, why is storytelling essential to our audience's brand?
There's a few reasons. We've had our great speakers touch on a lot of that today. The very first point really is connection. I mean, if you think about, you go into a restaurant, maybe you sit at the bar, you start a conversation with somebody and it's, are you from here? Did you go to school here? That's part of your story. You're getting to know someone. Great salespeople know that the best sales people in the business create connections because you're building a relationship. So that's the first one. The second big one, and Michael Solomon and I touched on this earlier today, is really about authenticity. How you represent yourself out in the world is incredibly important as a business. And according to a Stackla report that just came out fairly recently, 90% of people say that a brand's authenticity is incredibly important to their decision to back that brand. I mean, that's the vast majority of people. We've seen instances where companies have maybe not been completely transparent, information comes out, and it's damaging.
Right.
So it's really telling your story is telling the world who you are, why you do what you do, and how you do it.
Well, and what really comes up for me, I mean, I love that you're talking about authenticity right off the bat, because this has been a theme all day, if people have been tuning in all day. And authenticity is really where we start building the relationships with our community, with our clients, with our customers, with our following. Exactly. And when we are really, really honest through the storytelling, that is when people really respond. They feel our hearts. They feel, and that was what I was going to get to. So, Helena and Febin were just talking about Simon Sinek's Start With Why. You and I had talked about that in the prep for this interview. That is so interesting. If you have not seen that TED Talk, Start With Why by Simon Sinek, or if it's been a while, I invite you to go listen to that, because it's really powerful. People don't care about what we do. They care about why we do it, right? And so
exactly.
How can people really start touching into telling their story in a way that helps build momentum for their brands, for their marketing?
Well, when I work with clients, I start with what I call the backstory. How did you come up with this idea? Where did the idea for your business, come into your head? And many times, if not most times, it's solving a pain point. Maybe you're standing in the grocery line and it's late and you're waiting to get in and, get checked out, and it's taking forever. I mean, now we have self-checkout. How long did that take to come around? You start with that little seed that planted for you as to why you do what you do. And then you build from there. You go into your why. What's behind that? Your why is always your passion. If you line up 100 realtors and you really dig not too far, but a little bit below the surface as to why they do what they do. Why are you in real estate? You are going to get 100 different answers. And this brings me to the third reason why a story is so incredibly important is that it does two things at once. It acts as an attractor, a magnet for the people who are right for you, who are fit for your business, who are fit for your services. And it also acts as a filter so that the people who may not be a perfect fit for you or even just a good fit for you kind of go, okay, this isn't the right realtor for me. This isn't the right attorney for me. This isn't the right whatever it is you're looking for from me. But it's all about that resonance where people click in and go, I can back this brand. I can get behind this, these services, these products, because where they're coming from is a place where I come from too. And for as woo-woo as that may sound to people, if you're looking at millennials and Gen Z in particular, but I really feel it's spread to the full marketplace, this is the information people want to know. And if it's not there, if it's not on your website, it's not in your blogs, if it's not in your social media consistently, you're not just leaving money on the table, you're not connecting with the people you need to connect with to be successful.
I love that. I think it's so true. And I love the concept of like, it's not only attracting the people that you really can serve the absolute best, but it's also like repelling the people who are not right for your business, for your brand, for your product, even, or for you. I mean, I think that, going back to earlier in the day, talking about solopreneurship, when we're doing things completely by ourselves, and maybe we haven't had the resources to build a team yet, to really have worked on our mindset to be able to believe that that can be a possibility for us. We can't be spending our limited amount of energy. All of us have a finite amount of energy.
Absolutely.
On clients, as much as we want to take care of everyone in some cases, like we need to be able to take care of the people who are really going to benefit the most from our work. I mean, It's best for us. It's best for them. It's a win-win for everyone.
That's the goal. That's the goal of every business, but that is really where your story helps. It really will. And again, it feeds into authenticity too. And, some people have a little bit of trouble because they feel like they're bearing their soul. This is business. This is transactional. It's not transactional anymore. Certainly there are, at the end of that funnel, it's transactional. But to get to that point, you've got to have that brand story there for people to come in and buy into your brand and buy into you and buy into what it is you're selling.
It's so true. It's so true. I love it. I think it's so powerful. So how does Google fall into storytelling and building our brands?
Google, that Google machine. Google, and I'm sure most people out there watching know this, Google just gets smarter and smarter. They're using a lot of artificial intelligence now. But what I just read recently, even I wasn't aware of this, is that in 2019, quality of content became a pretty key factor in how they're assessing content, how it's getting indexed, how it's appearing, all of that. And really the bottom line is that the more, the smarter Google gets about this, really the bottom line is your content has to be really good content. Now you can say, well, I write great content. Well, if it's not connecting and engaging with people, it's not great for your audience. It's timing people. There's something called the bounce rate. If somebody goes to your page and it's less than 2 seconds, they go right off because they're not seeing what they want to see. That could be a web page, that could be a blog page. There's relevancy that's feeding into that. There's so much now more going into that indexing process. And they even have humans, believe it or not, who will wait for pieces of content to get indexed, and then they are going by a set of guidelines to say, okay, this, gets a certain score, blah, blah, blah. Of course, we don't know what those exact factors are. But the bottom line is that the better quality, the more focused, the more authentic those pieces of content are, the better you're going to do. I mean, and this is for small businesses, mom and pop stores, all the way up to your $100 million businesses.
It's so fascinating. So what I'm hearing you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that Google's always loved content in one form or the other. Like, let's be honest. However, like, it's almost like yes, keywords are still important for SEO, absolutely. Right. But it's almost like not just putting some content out there that's like 100% keywords, right? Like, it's like, no, actually tell a story.
Oh yeah, there's
really
intent. It reads intent. I mean, it's smart enough to understand, differences. Like, I need to go to court between like going to maybe traffic court versus the basketball court. But it goes beyond that. I mean, the intent really has to be there. What are you talking about? Are you talking about making brownies? And your piece isn't so much about brownies as you just made this great brownie mix and you want everybody to buy it. That's not, they're going to rank that low. You're not doing what you're saying in the headline that you're doing. Mm-hmm. It's really, if you've always suspected that Google is really smart, take that and multiply it by 100. Because we're probably still not touching on how smart it is. But, again, it goes back to the writing. It goes back to the essence of what is in your content. And the essence of your content, wherever it's living, should always be your story.
So Jodi, this makes me want to ask you the question, why are you so passionate about storytelling and helping business owners do this work?
I love a good story. I know that's probably this.
But you've also been a writer since you were young.
Too. I am. I mean, I started telling myself stories when I was 3 years old because fairy tales didn't cut it for me. So I made up a cast of characters and I told myself those stories to fall asleep at night. And I've just always been drawn to really great character pieces. But not even just that. I mean, Blades of Glory with Will Ferrell is one of my favorite movies. A good story is engaging. A good story is where you can see yourself or you go, I totally get that. I've done that. Or that reminds me of my uncle who, I love him to death. I mean, it's that piece. There's something in there that resonates. And that's the connection. And I just love that. It gives me just an adrenaline high.
Well, and I'm hearing like the depth of a story too. It's not just like Jack and Jill went up a hill.
Right. No.
Yay. Right. Like, why did they go up the hill? Not just the pail of water, but also like they had thirsty kittens at home and they needed right? Like whatever that is.
Right.
Like,
and like, where was Jill's girl crew? Like, she had to go with Jack. I think we need to rewrite this now. No, but exactly. It's that, because that's surface and that's transactional.
Yeah.
Jack and Jill took an action. I mean, and consumers today, they're going, why? Okay, you like dolphins as a company. Why? What are you doing for dolphins, if anything? What about the dolphins makes you love them so much? There's like, a whole bunch of other sea creatures you could like, and that's, again, you can't misrepresent yourself. And social cause is very popular in marketing, but if you're not doing it genuinely, don't put something out there like you are because you will eventually get caught. There's just too much information out there.
Right.
And, and if you're big enough, it's going to hit you.
Yeah.
So, stories make the world go round. I mean, that's where my head has always been at.
Yeah, I love it. So why are you so passionate about helping small businesses, solopreneurs, like really do storytelling right?
I have worked at enough big corporations that by the way, also don't do it right. But small businesses are the backbone of this country. I mean, they're most certainly the backbone of the state. We're from Vermont, but they're the driver of the economy. But the flip side of that is, we have essentially a 50% failure rate after, I believe it's 2 years. And I honestly believe that a big part of that is because small business owners, and particularly solopreneurs, have to wear every hat, at least when you're starting out. And what should be at the top of the list, which is marketing, tends to get knocked down because, and I understand it because I've been there too. You're too busy building the business and making the business happen. But meanwhile, a lot of times people have gone in with an idea and they haven't fleshed out that full story. And it actually helps because that's a part of your branding too. It's the essence of who you are. So I love to come in. I love to help small business owners pull that story out, discover it, and then show how it gets threaded through social media, your email marketing, your web content, blogging. Because to me, those are sort of the 4 basic pillars of having a marketing foundation that works and works for you. And I mean, but it's a lot of work. I mean, you need to plan. You have to be clear on what you're doing month to month. And that takes time, that takes effort. And, not everybody can write. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. There is a way to write marketing copy that it's its own thing, just like resume writing is its own thing. I don't write resumes because mine are 15 pages long. So that is not something that I do. But give me somebody, and I'm a digger, if you start talking to me about your backstory or why you do what you do, I'm going to keep asking until I find those nuggets and go, this is it. This is who you are. And this needs to be on your webpage. Right. And some clients are like, really? And I'm like, yeah, really.
Well, and I think that what you're talking about is vulnerability.
Yeah.
Again, like we're coming back to this authenticity, vulnerability thread that has been kind of running through this entire day. And what I really I'm kind of curious, because that can be difficult. Like when we're talking about being in business for ourselves and all of a sudden having to kind of sell our services, as it were, and talk about ourselves. And, maybe you've been brought up to be humble and you don't want to talk about yourself and you don't want to sell yourself and all these types of things. Right. Like, what are small ways that we can be authentic and vulnerable in our copy while kind of growing, working that muscle, so to speak, of authenticity and vulnerability before we're ready to like really share all the things or more of the things. And I think also it's a boundary question too. Oh, it is. Right? Like what are the topics that I'm definitely never going to talk about because it affects other people, etc. Like we get to make all these decisions. But where would you say that we could start?
I would say the best place to start is the features versus benefits, right? When we're talking about solving a pain point for a customer or a client, we're talking about the benefit end of our service, and that's what they're going to. What are you going to do for me? How are you going to help me? How are you going to fix X, Y, Z for me? Features are either your products, you sell candles, you sell shoes, and you should certainly get into those products, particularly if there are aspects that are helpful to illuminate, all natural, handmade, those sort of catchphrases that consumers look for. Vegan. But really at the end of the day, there are 100 other people doing that same thing. Why should they get that from you? And that, to me, is part of the vulnerability because, and you can illustrate that through customer testimonials, or even just explaining a story, but that's where you can expose a level of vulnerability that specifically pertains to your business. And in fact, that's what I would recommend. You have your story, but that's when you tie in what you do and how you do it. That's the benefits end. Too many companies big, small, medium, they focus way too much on the feature, the what it is. Buzz saws are everywhere. Like if your Home Depot is going to have it, Lowe's is going to have it. Why should you go to the local family hardware store? And that's the difference.
I love it. I love it. And it also feels like, I think that for a lot of tech companies, or for just a lot of companies, we think, oh, we'll get on social media and we'll tell a story, and then we're going to have all these people who just buy and buy and buy, and without really knowing them or having a conversation with them. And I think that that's kind of been the theme for today too. I just heard Helena and Fevin talk about it. It's their community. They're listening to their customers. What do they want, right? And it is a relationship with a lot of people at a time.
It's also the long game, and that's what I tell my clients too. Like, and you should be in it for the long game. Even if your long game is 5 years, that's still 5 years. You want to be building something that is sustainable and that your clients and customers and audience are going to trust that it's sustainable, that it's going to be there. So, and this is what I say about organic social all the time. Everyone needs to be doing organic social. And it's not about getting some instant high conversion rate. That's typically not going to happen with organic social. What you're going for is establishing your brand, finding the different ways to reiterate your story, and building that trust with the people who are following you, and kind of expanding that base bigger and bigger. It's the slow and steady race, but it's so important because, there's so many studies out there that show once you've got somebody believing in your brand, like they're 100% there. Yep. They're either in or they're out, and they may be following you for a year, before anything happens. But once they make that decision, they're there. They're an ally of yours. And you'd have to do something like tremendously stupid to make them not.
Well, you would have to, I don't think stupid is the word. I think it's out of integrity.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I think it's breaking our word. I think it's like, I said that I was this way, I was going to help you with this.
Yep.
And then maybe I didn't do that for, whatever reason.
Exactly.
And that's what breaks the trust and makes them go, oh, you know what?
Right. Right.
It fit me at the time, but it's not working for me any longer.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I also heard something else in there, and but I know that when we were talking about, so I loved this, when we were talking about this, when we were prepping for this interview, you said stories can help you figure out, what we came through was that stories could really actually help you figure out your demographic and who identifies with your brand.
Yeah, that's the real branding aspect of it. I've definitely worked with clients who went into the story part thinking that sometimes it was a bigger audience or just a smaller audience. But as I'm listening, I will say, I actually think you can appeal to, the late teen group if you just kind of tweak this a little bit, or, this is really applicable to a wide range of people. We just need to specify really the pain point that you're solving at this given age. Or this sounds more geared toward women than men, to be honest. And that's another really important reason to do your story, especially if you are at a startup phase and you're clear on your idea, but there's so much more around that. Again, that's like the granular seed, but you really have to identify a bunch of other things around that and be able to answer those sort of ancillary questions. And, it reminds me of an acting class that I took once in community college, but it was really good because I remember the teacher saying, what flavor ice cream does your character like? Does your character have long or short hair? Like, you had to know your character so well that you could answer any question. And I don't want to say you have to be able to answer absolutely any and every question about your business, but when it comes to what you do, how you do it, who your audience is, and how you're going to help them, you do have to have those answers.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So the one thing that you mentioned to me prior was why you do what you do ties into how you do it. This is going to be our last question. So
Yes.
tell me a little bit about that.
That really gets back to the reason of why you do what you do. I mean, you know, there are chef-owned restaurants, right? And there are investor group restaurants. Those are two, and the restaurant could be equally high-end, equally delicious food, all of that. But there's two very different motivations there. I mean, a chef-owned restaurant is a chef who is, you know, just that person to chef. Their passion is feeding people delicious, nutritious food. And I'm not saying that an investor group doesn't have that same passion, but it is a little bit different. They may have 6 restaurants, and we do have that up in Vermont. We have an investor group that has 4 really great restaurants. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that's a group of people who their mission is to offer, you know, high-end dining for tourists and locals alike, you know, serving really great food. So how you do it is that part that is going to resonate with the people you're reaching out to about your services. I mean, to me, that's like the final click, you know. Yeah. Because, you know, sometimes you can have different keys fit into a lock, but only one of them is going to turn it. And the how you do what you do combined with why is ultimately where you and your customer meet.
That's amazing. I love that. So I would love to hear everyone's comments in the chat, hear what came up for you during this. Jodi, thank you so much for this amazing, insightful conversation. And if people were to want to follow you or find you online, where would they do that?
You can find me at thewritestevvt.net, and that's THEWRITE, V's and Victor, T's and Tom.net. Jodi at thewritestevvt. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having this incredible conversation with us today.
Thank you.